are certain architectures that support consciousness, certain information architectures that support the capacity for having consciousness. The reality is that any brain that can do all of the other stuff we can do, handle perceptual information, handle memories, all those various things, handle emotional motivation, is going to have pretty much what it takes to have consciousness. Because consciousness is made up of lots of things. It's about perception, motivation, emotion, that kind of stuff. So I think a zombie upload is an unlikely scenario, but it's always a worry. I mean, I forget who was saying it before, but the whole idea that if you can upload somebody and they say they're fine, should you then go ahead and replace everybody using the same process, or have you just exterminated the human race? Grey goo is runaway nanotechnology, which is exactly the kind of situation that utility fog could turn into if it's given self-replicating functions, which it would need to spread over a large distance over any short space of time.
Grey goo kind of doesn't actually, I would regard as a non-problem because of the fact that there is already something rather like grey goo, namely bacteria, that tries its best but lacks energy. And
that's
true. As long as you've got an off switch, grey goo does not have that much of a danger.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? But what if it was more efficient and didn't have an off switch?
Yeah, well, the thing is we've been around about, well, sort of, for our survival, we've learned to overcome things like bacteria, whereas things we can design might be a different risk.
Yeah, but they still have the same energy scavenging problem, which is at the root of the reason why bacteria don't just disassemble us for parts.
I just think that we've had the time to evolve, or at least evolve a response to it.
I think you've got a point. I mean, too often when people are considering outcomes or feasibility of anything, they have a tendency to underestimate what's already going on in the natural world. But I don't think it's impossible. A grey goo scenario is impossible. But that's it. I'm not judging any of these things. I'm saying that these are some of the risks people have come up with.
Yeah, I tell you the worst one for now would be nano plague, because that would be something that could be, just.
Well, so it's got destructive effects other than just eating you outright.
Germs.
Germs. Okay. Yeah.
I mean, the key difference is the rate of evolution between these two.
Yeah. So we've got all sorts of other things. There's a bunch of stuff here. I mean, Anders Sandberg just a few weeks ago spoke about black swans, which is the stuff that's not on our radar. In all these, and there's all sorts of things that I remember the Terminator Skynet scenarios. Good old if you knew about the extropians back in the day, they had this fantastic term for that kind of thing, disasterbation, which was basically just thinking excessively about extremely unlikely disaster scenarios because of some sense of gratification. It's kind of visceral term, stuck with me over the years. But actually the one I would worry about, possibly, more than any of the others, is sort of totalitarian control. If you've got this much control over your environment and people, you have to worry about politics becomes a lot more important, in my humble opinion. Regardless of what your politics are, I think caring would become a lot more important because it would be easy to sleepwalk into a position where someone can control your entire existence, quite literally, without you being able to do a thing about it. Okay. Plausibility, well, we've talked about these things as we've gone through, so we don't really need to talk about this, but, can you, make a technical and only technical assessment. And I think we've actually talked about all of these examples. Congruence with the current belief system. So this is about worldview biases. This is where, when we're deciding what someone's bringing to the table, do they have something going on in their head, some perspective that needs to be made explicit? Now I will say one thing, that in the decades since World War II, within philosophy of science, it's to my mind, unfortunately associated with postmodernism, which a lot of physical scientists don't have a lot of truck with, myself included, because it's irritating. But the one thing they have been saying for several decades, which is really important, is that scientists always used to say, I'm objective. There is nothing remotely subjective about my models, the way I generate theories, the way I test those theories. Science is objective and value-free. And the postmodernists were quite reasonably saying, well, actually, that's not true, is it? The way you generate theories is based on a priori conceptions of what might be possible. They're not. The way you test those theories are based on not only what you consider to be acceptable, but all sorts of other vagaries, like the value of certain publications over other publications. Like maybe, apologies if you don't really know what this means, but say you're a scientist who wants to publish in journals in order to get your career ahead, and the best way to get ahead is to publish in high impact journals. So those journals that are read and quoted a lot by other scientists. And one of those journals obviously have quite clear editorial views about certain issues. You're going to, no matter how implicitly, you're going to tweak what you have to say to fit the message in order to get published. That's not value-free by any stretch of the imagination. So all I'm saying is that people have been saying that within the philosophy of science for a few decades, and I would say that you should actually try to do it in conversation. It's very, very hard, but try to get the perspective you're bringing, or the perspective you even imagine you might have, but would have said, no, I don't believe that. Try and get it out on the table and talk about it. I mean, my day job, as I said, is about self-awareness. And it's amazing. Some people, almost everybody, sometimes they'll hold a lot of views about what can and can't be, or what is or is not, that they didn't realise they held. They just use them implicitly. And if that sounds far-fetched and kind of Freudian, I will just give you one example. Hands up who drives or ride a bike? Or more to the point, who doesn't drive or ride a bike? Okay, for those people, think making a cup of tea, or something you do every day, okay? Once upon a time, there was a time when you did that thing for the first time, and you had to really think about it. You had to think, how do I change gears? Where are the tea bags? How do I do this? And then as you've done it over and over the years, it's become more and more automatic, or implicit, as they say in my area of work. And as it's become more implicit, that frees up your neocortex, basically. You've got less cognitive load, which means to say that you can go on making a cup of tea or going for your bike or your car ride and think about other things. So if you've been driving to work every day for the last 20 years, you can get to work, if your mind's on other things, your mind's on that council tax bill or whatever, you can get to work and someone say, so how was your trip? And more specifically, how was your trip between this block and that block? And you go, I have no idea. Now, no one's going to tell you that you didn't know what was going on at the time, because obviously you're doing a perfectly good job of driving, which involved a lot of technical knowledge. So you can have implicit knowledge, things that inform what you do, what you say, but you're not even aware of. One last example, even if that sounds far-fetched, I'll say your language, your native language, the one you learned as a kid. You know its grammatical rules, but unless you've gone on to learn another language or you're a linguist, it's highly unlikely you could explicitly tell me what those grammatical rules are. So I could say a sentence to you in your native language, and you'll be able to just instantly tell me if it's grammatical or not. So you know if it breaks the rules or keeps them, which shows that you know what the rules are. Not in any explicit, they are written down kind of way, but you've got a set of a prioris in your head that are, basically buttons are being flagged if I say the wrong thing or the right thing. But then if I say to you, tell me what those rules are, people generally can't, or they do a terrible, terrible job at it. So all I'll say is that stuff you think you don't know, get it out on the table when you're trying to assess these things with any degree of accuracy. So, and that's it. Thanks.
Well, thank you. So a wide spectrum of psychology, as well as looking at some particular technologies. So we've got some time for questions or comments. And do you want to dig into any of this more detail or take issue?
I'd like to know what you think needs to be included in a simulation in order to be a conscious mind.
Now, I'm pretty conservative in that I think you should model everything you possibly can just in case. I would like to model subatomic stuff, but I have no idea how you do that. It looks like it might be physically impossible. Well, except your real brain does it, so it's got to be, I mean, because at that point, simulation and the real thing, you're just trying to recreate the process. I don't believe we know enough to rule anything physical out. When I was saying about non-physical things, that's souls, pixie dust. That's the stuff that no scientist can ever observe, but which is important. That said, when I've said that in the past, I fall prey to that whole complexity thing that I said that we're given fall prey to. Quite often I forget that there are patterns in physical phenomena. One physical phenomenon could be described in different levels. So say there's a mouse skitters across the floor. I could describe it down to its every atom. I could describe the pattern of movement it covers. There's a lot of things I could describe about it. And how much of that is physical? I mean, if I'm describing what it did, what trajectory it took, I mean, is that a physical description of it? So there's a grey area, you
It's
know.
only informational, but it's not blue.